What's going on, everybody? How's everybody doing today? And I see people are still logging on here. Welcome, everybody that's here today to listen to tonight's incredible class. We are learning Likutey Moharan, the teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, his main masterpiece and main work. And what I thought would be good, considering that I know that, number one, a lot of people wanted to get on the first class, couldn't make it, and now they're joining for the second time, which is, if we're going to go through this, it's very important to do a recap, review of everything. So we're going to talk about that. I also wanted to discuss, first of all, tonight's dedication. So we are learning Leila Nishmat, Rabbi Zachariah Wallerstein, which I'm a Kohen. Don't have his Hebrew name on me right now, but a big loss to Kol Klal Israel, an incredible individual who helped so many thousands of lives, gave up a lot of his life to help as many people as he could, created so many things, a women's school to help out girls. His classes are phenomenal, inspirational. Just today, I just want to leave this out there before I move on to the next thing. I just want to say I saw a clip that he put out there. Maybe it was probably during the beginning of COVID, and he said it's time to move to Eretz Yisrael. As you know, guys who've been following me, you know what bandwagon I'm on. It's time to move to Eretz Yisrael. So I just saw that video today. Someone sent it to me, and I was like, another message. He knew what was going on, and I know right now he's probably going to be, as many other high-level individuals of our nation and tzaddikim of our nation, they're going to be knocking on Hashem's door to bring Mashiach and plead for Mashiach to come, B'mirabi Yameinu. But in order for that to all happen, of course, as we know, there's two different things. If Mashiach can come at the time it's supposed to come, meaning the end times, or it can come immediately, like right now. And all that's based upon what? All the Jewish people starting to keep the mitzvahs, keeping the Torah, unify themselves, get along with each other. These are the main ingredients for Mashiach to come, and it's really in our hands. And it all begins with doing and learning Torah. And the more Torah that we learn, and then we spread that Torah to the people and lighten up other people, the more we become, this effect is going to keep growing and growing and growing. And Mizrat Hashem, we have tzaddikim who have given us incredible Torah to inspire us and to help us have Yirat Shemaim and to help us get close to Hashem. And that's what it's all about. And that's what tonight's classes are all about, as we normally do. So B'ezrat Hashem, may the neshama of Rabbi Zachariah Wallerstein HaKohen should have an aliyah in Shemaim, and should be good for all of us. Should pray for all of us, and should only be good news. I also want to dedicate tonight's class in memory of my mother, Deborah Fega Bat Shmuel Zichron Bracha, my father Menachem Mendel Ben Elchanan Zichron Bracha. May the neshamas have an aliyah. Okay, so let's recap. Okay. Because this Torah has been an incredible, quick journey so far. But let's just recap. First of all, from you guys out there in the crowd, and for the ones of you were there, how many people actually stayed up at Hatzot or woke up at Hatzot to learn Torah? Can I see a show of hands here from all my Zoomers out there? I see like nobody is raising their hand. I'm kidding. You are? Okay, perfect. 2 participants have raised their hand. Kol hakavod. Kol hakavod that you've woken up. Oh my goodness, we see more people. Wow. Guess it really worked. Why are we talking about waking up in the middle of the night, right? So part of the whole inyan on that, and for those who are joining in for the first time, the whole class deals with the concept of music. And what do we say? What did Rabbi Nachman said? He said that when you listen to a person who is kasher, who is a virtuous person, a person, when they sing, first of all, they're a good person inside, but they're doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it to get you close to Hashem, right? I gave an example of Yishai Ribo. I went to one of his concerts not that long ago. I was like, wow, amazing. And the whole time I kept thinking, all he's talking about is Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. That's what it's all about, right? So he says that that's an important thing. You should always try to listen to those kind of people, because that's what's going to inspire you to get close to Hashem. Music is, as we learned in the first class, music deals with prophecy. The same place where prophecy came from, where the 2 cherubs in the ark, in the Kodesh HaKodashim, the 2 cherubs were looking at each other. That area right in the middle, that's where prophecy is from. We spoke about it from a sphera level. It's the sphere of Netzach and Hod, the two legs and the bottom part of the body, of the sphirot. And music comes from there as well. We spoke about the birds. There's the good birds from the Kedusha. The birds represent the cherubs, the angels that look at each other. That's the side of Kedusha. That's prophecy. We also learned that there's another side, the side of the dark side, the other side, the side of the klipot and the klipot. And what is that connected to? It's connected to listening to music from a wicked singer. If you listen to music from a wicked singer, what happens? It's detrimental, number one, to your neshama. Number two, it's not going to help you in Avodat Hashem, but it affects your neshama, whether you feel it consciously or not. It affects you 100%. The klipos come and they get you, and it will stir you away from Hashem, and it will stir you away from getting close to Hashem. And I would say for all those people, I'm going to actually challenge everybody, make an effort, go and do right now, go listen to some non-Jewish music, and tell me right now if you want to go learn Torah, just for fun, right? We speak about this all the time, but it's there's a reality to that, right? So Rabbi Nachman says, remember, we want to be in high-level connection to Hashem. Rabbi Nachman wants you to be an all-star player in the world of Judaism. If that's the case, we spoke about food. We've spoken about different aspects of a person's life. Music is huge. What did I say in the beginning of the class? Rab Nosson Abrasov, Rabbi Nachman's main student. He said specifically that the da'at of music, the knowledge of music, that whole world, is the most important da'at the person needs to know. And I have news for you. Rab Nosson Abrasov has written, I can't tell you how many pages of Torah, crossing every single possible subject in the Jewish world. He wrote Likutey Moharan. He has a whole Kabbalistic writing explanation of every single law that's done in Shulchan Aruch. And yet with all that knowledge and all that dot, the dot of music is the most important that he learned from Rabbi Nachman. Big information. So listening to a wicked singer, we defined what a wicked singer was. We said number one, and it is what it is, non-Jewish. That's one problem. Why? We spoke about it in length. Number two, somebody who's arrogant, someone who wants to do it for fame. It's not about, let me sing to you so you can get close to Hashem. We spoke about, and after the class, we had a lot of Q&A. We had a lot of questions and answers, which if anybody, again, wants to go in and chime in after this class, feel free. If you missed the first class, if you want to ask the questions again, I'm sure they're going to be there. Michael, I don't understand. Well, what about this or what about that? We'll talk about it more in detail. So we spoke about all that. Now that we covered that, then we spoke about Rabbi Nachman brings in a new idea that is unbelievable. He says, okay, fine. I listen to non-Jewish music. Now what? So there's a way, like everything else, to rectify, to figure out a way to rectify that issue that you have on your neshama. How do you do that? So Rabbi Nachman brought proof after proof, showing you that when a person wakes up at Hatzot, halachic midnight, not 12 o'clock. Nowadays, we spoke about in Miami, I think it's now it's like 2:30 something in the morning. It's an incredible time. It's a time of Ratzon. And that's the time specifically that if a person wakes up to do that and learns Mishnah or Gemara, remember, is the explanation of the Mishnah. But if you learn the Mishnah, why Mishnah? He showed you that the 6 orders of the Mishnah, which is what it's made up of, represents the 6 different areas of your throat. And the same way that the voice comes from the throat and it gave tuma from all what you were listening to, that same throat, the 6 orders of the Mishnah rectifies those 6 from the throat, and therefore it'll do stuff to rectify that issue that you'd have in your neshama from listening to that kind of music. Good? Cool. So with that being said, tonight what we're going to do is we're going to continue the ending of section 1 of chapter 3 of Likutey Moharan, and we're going to continue on that path. I have some really fun graphs as usual. We are the only one in the world today that is teaching Likutey Moharan with visuals. It's not just a text-based class. I try to help you understand it and visualize everything that we're discussing on a deeper level. Okay, so with that being said, let's get to work. Okay, so for you guys that are there, we have right from the top, I kind of continued it from where we were pretty much left off last night. Okay, and we go like this. So Rabbi Nachman now continues, and this is basically what I started off saying. He says, Hayinu al yedei she'ilmad shas Yitakin Hashit Yizkayin Shebekane. So if you study the 6 orders of the Mishnah, Shemechem Yetzo Hakol, which corresponds to, first of all, the Izbabin of Shebekane corresponds to the actual 6 rings of the windpipe. Shemechem Yetzo Hakol. That's where the voice comes from. Vezehu. Now he brings you a pasuk. Kumi Roni Balayla, which means what? Rise, sing out in the night. What is that from? So if you guys take a look, and I have it here for you. Actually, it's actually very important. We had a little, if you want to take a look at the graphs, the information that you have right there in front of you, take a look at that first page. It says with night. This is actually some background information because it's going to make sense in regards to this. We spoke about the fact, what's the inyan with nighttime, and how does that correlate to oral Torah, aka Mishnah Gemara? Why wake up in the middle of the night? What does that have to do with it? So we learned 2 things. Number 1, we learned that when Moshe Rabbeinu was in Mount Sinai, he learned oral Torah. How did he know he was learning oral Torah? It was nighttime. And it also says that in the daytime, he learned Torah Shebichtav. He learned the actual written Torah. So nighttime and oral Torah, aka Mishnah Gemara, represents the nighttime. There was also a pasuk that we learned from Lamentations. He seated me in dark places, is the pasuk. Maseches Sanhedrin in the Gemara says, what does dark places mean? It's the Babylonian Talmud. That's the dark places, aka dark, nighttime, Talmud, Gemara. So we have the connection. I needed to put that out there first. That's the connection that we have of nighttime equals Gemara. Now, take a look at the pasuk. Look at the pasuk here. Kumi Roni Balayla, rise, sing out in the night. What is this all about? So if you look at the word, Kumi Roni Balayla. Kumi means what? Get up, but also means to elevate. Kum, to raise. Okay, it's funny, I wrote here, we raise an elevator song. That's called a misspelling once again. Thank you so much for the grammatical corrections there. But we raise and we elevate song. Roni means song. How do we do that? Balayla, Laila, aka Gemara, Talmud, Mishnah. As we know, that's an aspect of the night. So Rabbi Nachman's bringing you the pasuk. Look, it says it right there. Rise, sing out at night. What are we talking about? Hainu shetiyet tekuma leharina. Shahinu shetiyet tekuma leharina. Hainu ayde halayla shehi gemara shas. So we see here that song is raised up. That bad song that you were hearing that affected your neshama, we raise it up by the means of the night, aka the 6 orders of the Talmud or the Mishnah. Now, based on that, take a look at the next graph, guys. This is just extra bonus fun stuff. If you weren't right now learning regular Likutey Moharan, you would not be seeing this. But this is more to double down on these ideas. Take a look at this. Masechet Megillah 32a. Okay? Look what it says here. And Rabbi Shafatia said that Rabbi Yohanan said, concerning anyone who reads from the Torah without a melody or studies the Mishnah without a song, the verse states, so too I gave them statutes that were not good, and judgments whereby they should not live. As is one who studies Torah through song, demonstrates that he's fond of his learning. Furthermore, that tune helps him remember what he has learned. Whoa, so here we go again. You see a pasuk in the Gemara that connects song and Gemara and Mishnah learning. The same negative song that you heard that we're trying to do the opposite of, rectify it. Look what I'm doing right now. How do you use it when you hear people going, and I learned that. What am I doing? You're singing the Torah. Where do we learn that? In Masechet Megillah, in the Gemara. So you see another proof to show you that learning oral law and song are very connected. Beautiful. Take a look at another pasuk. This is from Shira Shirim, Song of Songs. Pasuk is Hazamir Higia V'Kol Hator, which means what? The time of singing has arrived, and the voice of the turtle dove. A Torah is a turtle dove. By the way, turtle dove is a bird, which we spoke about the birds in the last class, right? The time of singing has arrived. What does the Zohar say on that? The Torah is the oral Torah. The Zohar says. So look at the pasuk and you see things dealing with singing or not. No, that's not what the Torah. Yes, it's the bird, which we spoke about, the bird of Kedusha. The Zohar says that Torah, that turtle dove, is the oral Torah. Another pasuk to prove you, to double down on these ideas that singing and Gemara are very much connected, and they're used to rectify. All right, back to the actual text we go. Rabbi Nachman continues and he says, when a person studies not for learning's sake, in order to be called a rabbi, very interesting where we're going with this, the study that this guy is learning is not at all meritorious. You're not going to gain anything from that. So let's discuss this idea. What is the concept of lishma, to learn Torah lishma, or learning Torah lo lishma? What is this all about? Take a look at the graphs. Next page. You can look at the back. You see the happy face, lishma, and the not a happy face, shelo lishma. All right, cool. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Amen. What's this whole about lishma, lo lishma? Okay, so there's two types of study, and there's going to be a one middle one. When I'm learning lishma, that's a very high level of learning Torah, which means what? As you can see here, I have it. To study for the sake of fulfilling the Torah. Why am I learning? Why are we here tonight? Because I just want to get close to Hashem. There's no agendas. I'm not here for personal gain. I'm not here to show off to somebody else that I'm here. I don't have anything to prove to anybody, okay? I don't care. I'm here because there's a Torah class. I want to get close to Hashem and I want to learn. That's my agenda. My agenda is Hashem, period, okay? If you're going to learn lishma with a happy face, right? What does that do? It strengthens the malchut of holiness. If we learn, going back to the sfirot, we know, let me see if it's back here. I'm gonna go down. Oh my God, I'm going down. I'm cheating on you guys. Okay, here we go. Look, here's the graph. The graph of the sfirot is right here in front of you. And you see how malchut is all the way on the bottom? We've discussed malchut many times. Malchut, right, is where in the world that we live in. Malchut also represents a concept of kingship, right? When we're learning Torah Lishma, we are raising Malchut. We are putting it where it needs to go, where it should be to raise Hashem's name. But that's one way, not, believe it or not the easiest way in the world. People may think it's very easy. Sometimes we really, really need to check ourselves and see how much exactly are we doing everything Lishma. What about Shelo Lishma? Not so good. When a person, and this is what Rabbi Nachman's talking about, when you're learning Shelo Lishma, you're not learning Torah for its sake. What does that mean? I'm learning Torah to argue with other people. Not because I want to keep the laws. I don't care about that, right? There are people, believe it or not, that go out of their way to learn Torah so the next day they can go and they argue with a rabbi, or they argue with another person, or they might even confuse other people. Believe it or not, that's a thing. I'm doing because I have to prove something to somebody else. I know what they're talking about. I cannot argue with them. That's Shelo Lishma. Now that's a very, not really like bad end lo lishma, because I'm going to talk about now a middle one next. What is Talmud Barachot? The Gemara, what does it say on that? It would have been better had he not been born, if you're learning Shelo Lishma. That's how bad it is. Better you wouldn't have been born for you to be learning in this level. What does Shelo Lishma do? It strengthens the malchut of the klipot, of the other side. Remember what he spoke about last week's class? They're constantly looking to feed off the light and the energy of malchut. They nurse from netzach and hod of malchut, and they come and they scavenge the light. That's what they do. Guess what happens when you're doing that? You're giving them energy. You're giving the klipot energy. When you're giving klipot energy, not good, and it's not good for you either. It's not good for Kal Yisrael, but it's not good for you either. Now there's a middle one. Took the next one. We have a lishma with the happy face on one side, and we got a lishma on the side. So you got somebody that's right smack in the middle. What's the deal with that? And this is something, again, we talk about these things because we need to just have it always in our minds. Okay? If we don't have it in our minds, you might not realize that this could actually fall sometimes under your mindset. A person has when I'm learning Torah, good intent to follow the laws. But when I'm learning, I'm looking for some sort of personal benefit when I'm learning. For example, wealth. Person goes, oh, well, if I learn Torah, Hashem will make me rich. I have news for you. That's not lishma, right? If I know Hashem's going to provide for me if I learn, okay. I know that if I know Torah so well, I'll be able to teach now every night, make X amount of money because Torah teachers are getting paid good money. It's about you. Now, but I am like learning it. Yeah, like I'm keeping the laws, like I'm trying. But it's not because of how I want to spread Hashem's Torah, because I just want to be close to Hashem, because I want to inspire the people, right? There's two different machshavas. How about another one? I'm learning Torah because I want to be called a rabbi. Yeah? I have news for you. There are a lot of people on the internet today that teach Torah, okay? And they do it, and they do fine. It's okay, no problem. And they call themselves rabbi, blah, 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 whatever. Now, just to be clear, again, it's not like you're not in the shalom lishma level, but you are in that middle ground. What does Masechet Pesachim say on that? It's beneficial to study even shalom lishma, for from shalom lishma, one can become to lishma. Meaning if a person, even if you go in that derech, you may, because now you're learning so much Torah and it's affecting your soul, and now you're like your mind opens up and you get close to Hashem, and then you realize, what did I do? Right? It's going to affect you. Essentially, eventually you'll get to lishma. Better you do it like that, because I'm still keeping the commandments, I'm keeping the laws, I'm still doing everything. Okay? But I wanted to clarify that it's one of those subjects where like I could have just moved on and said lishma, call it a day, but it's very important to understand that when we're doing that, we have to be conscious. Why am I doing what am I doing? Am I expecting to gain something from Hashem because I'm doing something? Then you miss the boat. Then you're not lishma. You know, a lot of people, they think like that. If I do this, I'm going to get this. We can't be like that. And I know, and I'm not telling you it's easy, because sometimes it is a natural inclination that we have. Hashem, look what I'm doing for you. Why don't you do something for me? You have to think about it. Just to think about it. Okay. So now we're based upon what we just said. What does Rabbi Nachman say? He's saying if a person is learning and you're waking up in the middle of the night, it's 2:30 in the morning, kol hakavod to you, but I'm learning Gemara. Why? Because I want you to call me a rabbi. Because if I know my stuff, I'm going to have the best classes. Or if I'm going to learn whatever. This study is not meritorious. Rabbi Nachman is very clear on that. One more background information. I think it's super fascinating. And it's a little deep, but just understand what this means. You guys ever heard of what the mochin are? Mochin are the mentalities. Mentalities is a concept of ideas, concepts, thoughts that come. There's the upper mentalities and lower mentalities, very deep Kabbalistic ideas. But this is the part that's why you have to be so careful that even if you're going under the lolish, under that middle ground, and you're still doing it to be a rabbi, so to speak, and wealth and success and fame, that area of the mochin, of the brain, the part where that guy has a desire for fame. I want to learn, I want to teach because I want to be famous. Just the same way we're speaking about music. A guy who sings music, what's the problem with listening to these people? If they're looking for fame. By the way, that's why I always just make that joke. How many people in the music world today want to be famous? Ouch. Right? So that same idea applies also with learning and teaching Torah. Like, what's your goal, right? So the Kabbalah says that desire to gain fame, that part of the mentalities, it contains the seeds of the mochin, which are connected to that same area where a person studies to harass other Torah teachers, to argue with other teachers. They're very close. Haughtiness and arrogance, and I'm full of myself. It's not about Hashem. It's very much connected to that same lo lishma hardcore bad level. It's right there. So you have to be, why I'm saying that is, that's on a Kabbalistic level, you have to be very, very careful what you're doing and how you're approaching it if you're doing it like that. Okay. Now Rabbi Nachman continues and he says, Ukeshelomed balayla, but if he studies at nighttime, chut shel chesed nimshach alav, a thread of loving kindness is drawn upon him, umegan alav, drawn upon him. Shelo yazik lo machshava. So first of all, this thread of loving kindness, we spoke about it last week. Chut shel chesed. It's drawn upon him, and it's drawn upon him when? Specifically, during the daytime. Yazik lo machshava. It protects him from being affected by this intention to want to be a rabbi person, to be for fame, to be for wealth. If you wake up during Chatzot, it's gonna help you to get rid of those intentions, to get rid of your gava. And God's going to give you that loving kindness, that thread of loving kindness that's going to come upon you. And again, I want to point out this, that, and for those who have experience, I'm curious to hear your, after we're done with this class on our Q&A, I'd love to hear whoever actually did wake up in the middle of the night. What was your experience like? Love to hear about it. And again, obviously, the more a person does it, the more you'll feel it. You'll understand the magic that goes on at that time frame and how you'll feel the next day. But it's a really, really an amazing thing. Now, if you look at the graph, I want to point out one more interesting idea regarding all this. Take a look at the next page. Take a look at this. I brought some extra. This is extra information that supports all of this. Look at Tehillim 42:9, Psalms 42:9. Yomam yitzaveh Hashem chasdo, ubalayla shiro imi tefila le'el chayai. What does it mean? In the day, God commands his loving kindness. By night, song with me. David HaMelech, okay? The master of waking up in the middle of the night. Yeah. Look at the pasuk. He's telling it to you. In the daytime, God commands his loving kindness. By night, song with me. Maharsha, one of the main commentators, incredible commentator in the Torah. What does he say? He explains that one who is awake well into the night will generally have a sullen face from lack of sleep, right? If you're up all night, you're gonna be tired. However, when a person studies Torah at nighttime, God draws upon him a thread of loving kindness and grace. That's what David HaMelech is saying. You're going to have it in the daytime. You're going to have the loving kindness. And at nighttime, the song is with me. What did we say song was also? Gemara, Orola, learning at that time, at nighttime. Look at the Ein Yaakov. Ein Yaakov adds, the Torah study at nighttime is called true Torah. Oh my God, because it's not spelled right. Because his meritorious deed is hidden from others. Unlike the daytime, when his deed, it's not his motive. Meaning, if I'm learning in the daytime in a place, okay, like I'm not here to show off, right? But if people see you, oh, look at him, he's learning in the daytime in the kollel, it's going to give you some recognition, whether you wanted it or you didn't want it. It gives you that exposure. But what happens when you study at nighttime, when it's quiet, by yourself? Nobody knows. What is that? The concept of humility. No galva. No lolishma. It's not about me. Why am I doing it? Right? That's a difference. Look at what the Ein Yaakov says based on that idea. Beautiful. Good so far? We're rolling? All right. Section 2. Be'ita bechit be'Arizal. Now it's brought in the writings of the Arizal of blessed memory. Kitziparim shebeklipa hemochin shebemachud debeklipa. We learned this last week. There's the birds of the klipa. They're the intellect of Malchut de Klipa. They're from the kingdom of the other side. And these two live pure birds, we spoke about the two live pure birds, that when you, remember we spoke about if you say Lashon Hara, you get leprosy, how do you fix it? It's a whole process, but you got to bring these two birds. And then what was the reason behind it? That's going to bring you the ultimate purity, because when you spoke and you chit-chatting, right? You chit-chatting, the birds also chit-chatting, so you sacrifice those two birds, that's the same idea. Those are the top two live pure birds, aka Kedusha. So there's two live pure birds are the concept of building up Malchut de Kedusha. We spoke about this. The Malchut de Klipa, the kingship of the whole of the other side, and there's the kingship, the holiness of the side of holiness and Kedusha. There's a constant battle. Okay? Now, Rabbi Nachman, based on that, says, Lefichach, Nishtabach David lifnei Shaul. Therefore, David was praised before Shaul. Remember, who was Shaul? Shaul was the king before David, right? What's the pasuk? Ve'yodea nagen. He's David HaMelech, is one who is skilled at playing music. So in the book of Shmuel, it says specifically, what a coincidence. David HaMelech is skilled at playing music, right? Now, what was this whole pasuk about? Just in general, King Shaul, his advisors, tell him to call for somebody who's going to come and comfort him and calm his spirit with music and song. That's where this whole pasuk comes from. And why? Because it says that the spirit of Shaul God's spirit had left him. So now those advisors like, listen. Remember we spoke about the music helps you reconnect and re-get prophecy and re-get back in, right? So who do they call? They call David HaMelech. Right? Why? Because he was skilled at playing music. So this is from the book of Shmuel. He was a warrior. He was valiant. He was understanding. He was handsome, and God was with him. Okay, so we have a connection right now with David HaMelech, skilled at playing music. Rabbi Nachman continues and he says, "Ki hanegina hi binyan hamalchut." That's because song is the concept of what? Building up the Malchut, as we learned before. Kumironi, lifting it up. I'm sorry, one more last part. And it says here, that's why David was deserving of Malchut kingship. Meaning, David, because of the fact that he was a master music player person, and he's connected to the side of Malchut kingship, which is representation of also music and song, he was able to lift up, to build up the Malchut of God, not from the other side. He's able to lift up the Malchut from Kedusha and holiness. That's why it's written. That's what's written about David. Me'achar alot hebiu. From behind the nursing ewes, he brought him. What is that all about? So, and the end of the pasuk is to tend to his people Yaakov. Take a look at the printout again. Here we go. Here's a beautiful picture I found online of King David when he was young, right? I don't know if that's really what he looked like, but the point here we see here, it's a double whammy. You see him with the harp, and what do you see around him? Sheep. Why? Because David HaMelech had a very special quality, right? He took very good care of the sheep, right? It says here, and looking at the description, the Shmot Rabbah, this is from the Midrash. It says about him, he took the young sheep to pasture, so they eat the soft upper part of the grass. Next, he takes the elderly sheep, the older ones, to pasture, so they eat of the middle of the grass. And finally, David takes the hardy sheep, the ones that are really healthy, so they eat through the bottom part of the grass. What does Hashem say? Look how detailed he's going. He knows what this sheep needs to eat and this sheep needs to eat. He's very good about it. He cares about everybody specific. He's not like, you go, I don't care. Very specific about every single one. Right? What does Hashem say? This one is certainly fitting to be the shepherd, the king of my people. So you see, David HaMelech, a person who was so skilled in music and song, was taken from the people because he knew how to take care of the flock, to be a ruler of the kingdom. But more specifically, why is that pasuk? Why is Rabbi Nachman bringing you this pasuk? Let's look at part 2. Look what he says. What did he do? From behind, he's bringing a pasuk from Tehillim. From behind the nursing ewes, he brought him, ewes means sheep, he brought him to tend his people Yaakov. Rabbi Nachman says, Me'achar alot hebiu. Haynu me'achar hamenikot. Haynu netzach v'hod. That is, from behind those that suckle. What's that? Ki hem menikim l'nabiyim hem binyan hamalchut. And this refers to netzach and hod, for they nourish the prophets in the concept of building up malchut. Take a look at the graph again. We'll go to the next one. You see here the place the prophets nurse, and you see the sphirot. We spoke about this last week, and now you're going to look at it again. You go like, oh, cool, that totally makes sense. Where does it say where the prophets? The pasuk wasn't last week. The place that the prophets nurse. It's a wording that's used. Nursing. Where do the prophets get their kedusha, their holiness? Where do they get the prophecy from? Where do they nurse it from? Where? From Netzach and Hod. That's the graph on the bottom, the two legs right there. Okay? So why is that connected to David HaMelech? The same way. Look at the pasuk, what it says. From behind the nursing ewes, let's call them sheep. From behind the nursing sheep, behind those that suckle, right? Nursing, right? They're nursing these sheep. The same way that the prophets get that from Netzach and Hod, David HaMelech was able to do the same thing by elevating prophecy equals music. He was able to elevate these two areas of Netzach and Hod, aka nursing the actual sheep, same idea. That refers to Netzach and Hod because they nurse the prophets. The same way they nurse the prophets, aka the music is coming down in Kedusha and holiness, David HaMelech was able to raise music up. And that's the idea behind this pasuk. And he's able to build up the malchut to the side of holiness and kedusha. Good? Okay. Next. V'zeh Shama Rabba Baruch Hana. Now, if you guys remember my first class, we started off the whole Torah with the story of Rabba Baruch Hana. And what did we say about Rabba Baruch Hana? For those joining for the first time, Rabba Baruch Hana had incredible stories in the Gemara, very difficult to understand, very wild and out there. There are a lot of meanings behind everything he says. He came to Rabbi Nachman in a dream, and he asked him, interpret my stories. And Rabbi Nachman said, I'm going to put them into my Torahs and etc. So we start off the story, okay? And now what Rabbi Nachman does, he's going to break down the story and show you how that's all connected to everything with this so far we have been speaking about. Okay? So here we go. The story begins like this. That's what Rabbi Baruch Hana said. And he said like this. The Didi Chazi li hachi akrukta. So he says, if you go to the beginning, I myself saw this akrukta. What was an akrukta? So the Rashbam says akrukta is Aramaic for tzfardeya, Aramaic for a frog. So he sees this frog. Take a look at the graph here. Rabbi Nachman has, and there's a nice cute little frog I chose there. So Rabbi Nachman says, Uferash Rashbam. What does the Rashbam say an akrukta is? Tzfardeya. Right here. Take a look at here. Hainu tzipur deya. Tzfardeya. He breaks it down into two words. Tzipur deya. What does that mean? Now let's take a look at the graph here. Tzipur deya means, tzipor means what? Bird. Deya means awareness, knowledge. So what's this all about? So this is a very more of a difficult teaching. Again, just to simplify it as easy as possible. The Arizal teaches, this is in Shar Psukim. He says, he's the one who actually came up with the idea that it's Fardeya, it's Sipur Deya. Okay. And Deya means awareness, it means knowledge. Sipur, we learned, is connected with Malchut, because it's where the birds, it's the singing, deals with Malchut. How is Malchut built up? With the concept of Deya. The builders of Malchut is through Netzach and Hod. But Deya, the knowledge, when a person's getting music that's coming in from Netzach and Hod, it bring something to their knowledge, to the day of awareness of Hashem, of closeness to Hashem. The day of the opposite, when you're dealing with the bad tziporim, the bad birds, the two birds are connected to the other side, that knowledge of Hashem goes bye-bye, and anything that implants not good ideas, not good thoughts, especially if you're listening to someone with curse words, or talking about things specifically that are totally inappropriate, that are everything against Hashem. I can go on and on, but it affects you mentally. Your daya is affected by it. That's the concept of the birds of awareness of knowledge. So the first part is, based on that, Rabbi Nachman says, Ki akra, excuse me. So he says, Rashban comes, Perish Rashban, Tzfardea, Hainu Tzipordea. Okay, so now we know that's phase one. We know that the actual birds, that you can be affected by the concept of the birds. The birds was a concept of music. That can affect your knowledge. Part two of the story, the Akra de Hagronia. Ki Akra de Hagronia. So what was Akra de Hagronia? Akra de Hagronia means, and it was the size, this frog was the size of the city of Agronia, right? So Rabbi Nachman breaks down Hagronia. Milishon Kra Begaron. Hagronia is very similar to Kra Begaron. What does Kra Begaron mean? Cry out from the throat. Hainu Shanigina Nimshechet Mimenu. The song is drawn from the Tzipordea mentioned above. Take a look again at the graph for everybody who's looking online. Here we go. We put here Akra de Hagronia. Look at that. Look at the similarity. Kra is in Akra, and de Hagronia, you have the Garon in de Hagronia, which means what? Cry out from the throat. That pasuk, by the way, where he's talking about Kra Begaron, cry from the throat, where is that from originally? It's from the book of Ishayahu, from Isaiah. And what does it have anything to do with it? It has the idea that God tells Isaiah, cry out in a loud voice, right? That was the idea behind it. But remember, who is Isaiah? Isaiah is a prophet, right? And the Mechanachal, which we learned about him from last week, he explains Akrukta, which is the frog, which equals Malchut, the bottom part of the Sphira, is rectified through what? How do you rectify that? Through Akra de Hagronia, through the voice, the song from the birds of Dea, which draws from the same place as the prophets. That's why the pasuk specifically from Isaiah was chosen that deals with prophecy. You want to have the right Dea, the right mindset, you need to listen to the side of Kedusha, holiness of music, aka from the side of prophecy, from the side of Netzav and Hod. So that's the concept of the city of Agrunia, aka Kra Begaron, cry out from your throat. The next part of the pasuk. The Akar de Hagronia. Kama chave shitin bate. So the question, the story goes, and how large was Akra de Hagronia? How big was the city of Agronia? Shitin bate. It was the size of 60 houses. By the way, if you're following along in the story, the frog is the size of a city. The city is now the size of 60 houses. Is that a big frog? Right? Okay. As long as you're following along in the real story, what's going on. Rabbi Nachman's breaking it down. It should already start ringing bells to you. 60 houses. Why do I know 60? Where do I know 60 from? That's by what it means, the concept of cry out from the throat. How do you cry out from the throat? How is that rectified? The 60 houses. The 60 tractates of the Talmud. And we spoke about the 6 parts of the Mishnah. The Talmud is made up of 60 volumes. So that's how you rectify it. Uperash Rashbam, and Rashbam says on that, Talmud Kamar La Hainu Ilma Talmud. Rashbam comments, the Talmud says this. One should study Talmud. What is this all about? So if you take a look at the graph here, you can see, put it here, 60 houses, 60 volumes of Talmud. You see that? Take a look at this. This is a whole pasuk from Masechet Sota in the Gemara. What is the goal we're trying to do here? Rabbi Nachman showing you a pasuk is connecting right now houses with Gemara. We didn't even discuss, you should have already caught, okay, you know about the 60, oh cool, 60 gave it away. But no, there's more. Look at this. And really, I almost like to read you the whole thing would be like, I'll just read it to you, fine. Alternatively, this from Sota. This verse may be understood as relating to Torah study. Prepare your work outside. That's a study of Bible. And make it fit for yourself in the field. That's a study of Mishnah. Afterwards, you should build your house. That's a study of Gemara. The study of Gemara, look at it. I'm just going to look at it first in English for everybody. The study of Gemara, what's the words right before it? Build your house. You see that? Now let's look at it in Hebrew. Take a look at it right here. You see that? Gemara and betecha and houses are connected. You see that? How amazing is that? So Rabbi Nachman's telling you the 60 houses, yeah, houses equals Gemara. And on top of that, in the story it says it's 60 houses, aka the Gemara, the Talmud. Unbelievable. Appreciate this, guys. This is not simple. This is very high level Torah, and he's really bringing it down for you, and it makes sense based upon the Torah he's talking about. What happens next? So we just passed the 60 houses, and again, you should study Talmud, very nice. Ata tanina bala. What happens next? A serpent came by and swallowed it. Swallowed this frog that was the size of 60 houses. Now the serpent comes and he swallows that. Farash Rashbam. Rashbam comments on this pasuk and he says, Rabba Kamarla. Rabba says this. What are we talking about? Take a look at the graph. Again, to explain it. What I had to do, because when we started the first class last week, many people online or in person didn't have this little commentary. But it's good for you guys to see it here because it's going to explain. The story of Rabbi Bar Chana, as you can see in front of you, on the right-hand side is the Rashbam. The Rashbam is the main person that translates and explains what's going on in the story from a literal level, right? Look what it says. A serpent came by and swallowed it. Now, what does Rashbam define a serpent? It says, it came by, and look what it says. Rabbah says this. You see that? That's what it says. Rabbah says this. Okay. So based on that part of the serpent, you know what Rabbi Nachman says? Unbelievable. Rabbah, if you look at the word Rabbah, and you could see here in the graph, right? There's a terminology in the Gemara, they call a person a Gavra Rabbah. A Gavra Rabbah literally means a great man. Okay? And that's a terminology that's used for a person who's like a Talmudic scholar, a very, very well-learned person. So Rabbi Nachman explains, based upon Rashba's comment, and what does he say? That it was Rabbah who said this, meaning a person who studies to become a Rabbah, a person who's studying to become what? A great person. His motive is not clean. He's trying to be a Rabbah guy. I want to be this very famous person and everybody needs to listen to me, or I'm going to argue against the rabbi, whatever. The serpent represents that part of the story. Rabbi Nachman's taking the commentary from Rash, the famous commentary from Rashban. There's a reason why it says Rabbah says this. Why? Because Rabbah, the guy, wanted to become a big person. What do we call that? Rabbi Nachman says, going back now to the text, and he says, meaning his study was lo lishma. He wasn't learning for the right reasons. And so what happens? The serpent swallowed it. Rashbam, Rabba Kamarla. And that's why Rashbam comments, Rabbah says this. It's kind of like weird. Rabbah says this. Why? Because he studied in order to be called a rabbi. Interesting. Based upon the serpent coming and swallowing it. By the way, I don't have to tell you this. What is a serpent? The Nachash represents Klipa. It represents the other side. Anytime you have a serpent, you need to be wary. Why is that in a symbol? Right? And I'll say this more for pop culture. This is fun for all the people out there that can go to pop culture, right? I remember looking at this the other day, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe that's so weird. You guys watch Karate Kid, right? You have two schools. You have Miyagi and you have Cobra Kai, right? Who's the bad guy? Cobra Kai. What's their color? Black. What's their rules? No, they're just bad people. They don't care about you. They don't care about anything. They're just to win it. It's about themselves, and that's it. The serpent represents coming from behind you, biting you, making you depressed, making you sad. It's about me. It's about Gava. That's the serpent. So you see her very much connected with the concept of me, me, me. I want to be a Rav. I want to be a rabbi. That's the serpent. That's what it says. A serpent came by and he swallowed it. Perfect. What happened? Actually? In the story? Yes. Did he actually? Yes. Because I mean, in the story that he said, yes.
I'm trying to. So we know that Spardea is as big as that big city, and the city is 60 houses. So it's a value of the community. It's a value of.
Yes.
And comes this
serpent
takes this whole.
And boom, now imagine how big the serpent is. It just swallowed a frog the size of 60 houses. Sounds like Haggadah. We just finished, right? Haggadah, Gavrava. Okay. Right. All right. So now, fine. So now we got this snake. What happens next in the story? Ata pushkansa ufperash Rabbeinu Shmuel Oriv. Hayinu aidei shilmad balayla mishon arbit. What are we talking about? So a pushkansa, again, if you guys look at the graph, we covered the first one. Take a look at this guy, right? Look at what Rashbam says. What's a pushkansa? A female oriv, a raven. How do you say oriv? Look at that. Oriv is ayin vav reish bet. What sounds exactly like oriv? Arvit. Arvit is the nighttime. Erev, right? So what does that have to do with it? How do you fix it? One needs to study at night. That's how you fix that serpent that swallowed you up. That represents the opposite.
She didn't actually swallow because we're still learning. There are other around the world, and every time zone, there are people studying. So we are keeping that serpent that big.
Yes, but on a personal level, yeah, maybe on an individual level. Correct. Now, by the way, interesting. You know what it says in Masechet Eruvin? I did not put this in my notes, but I'm just going to tell you again. I'm showing you how all the Torah is connected. It's unbelievable. The more you learn, you're like, unbelievable how this all ties in. You know what it says about a person that wakes up at nighttime and learns? The Torah says, someone who rises early to study and studies late into the night. You know what the Torah says it's called? He shows, first of all, the person, he shows himself no mercy. My God, that's a line from, okay. If you guys got that, you got that. He shows himself no mercy. You know what he said the wording is? Blackening himself like the raven through self-abnegation. Guy who's learning all night, wakes up the next morning super early, learns again, goes to Nays, learn. He's beating himself up. It's physically taxing on a person. The wording is he's blackening Erev, nighttime, like a raven. Masechet Eruvin. Cool. So you see again another layer. What does it mean when the pushkansa comes by? It's that fixing. It's a nighttime study. What happens with this pushkansa? Ubala. And he comes and he swallows that serpent. That's a pretty big pushkansa, right? Hainu, Megan alav mina nachash, anis kalael. The study of Torah at nighttime protected him from the above mentioned serpent. Meaning, it keeps him from that serpent-like behavior of studying. The idea of studying at nighttime because I want to be famous, because I want to argue against Torah scholars, when a person wakes up in that middle of the night, and learn it like that, it protects you from going into that derech, into that direction. That's the idea. That's what it does.
Is Tikkun Chatzot read in Chatzot?
Yeah.
Tikkun Chatzot is read at
Yes,
Chatzot?
that's the first part.
And Tehillim at 5 o'clock.
You can do Tehillim at that time too.
Until
I mean, the
12.
Tikkun Hatzot is Tehillim.
Not yet.
But you cannot go over 12 o'clock at night with the Helim. They said it's not.
It's not right. It's not the best unless you're doing it for like somebody's in the hospital or
Correct.
like it's different.
Yeah.
But from the perspective of what you're saying, yes. But again, you can wake up in the middle of the night, Hatzot, and you
Yeah.
can say Tehillim.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea.
Chatzot is already morning.
Yeah, well,
What happens next in the story? Vesalik Yati Veilana. And then this Orev, it went up and it perched on a tree. It literally went up on top of this tree. Parasha Maharsha, the Maharsha comments on this tree. Shehu Bechinat Abraham. That's that aspect of Abraham Avinu. Shekatu Betzlo Vaital Esho. There's a pasuk in Breshit that says, Abraham planted a tree. Shehu Bechinat Chesed. What does Abraham correspond to? Abraham is an Ish Chesed. From the concept of the Sfirot, just to repeat again, you have right side, which is Chesed, which represents Abraham Avinu. And you have the concept of Gevura, which is Yitzchak Avinu, which is difficulty, tough, discipline. And then you have Yaakov Avinu, which is the concept of both. It's Tiferet, it's Pe'er, it's beauty, it's perfect, which is the week we're in right now as we speak. We're in the week of Tiferet. So Maharsha says the concept of the tree, he takes a pasuk, Abraham planted a tree. That tree that raven went on top of. So therefore, what does that mean? Because that raven, which represents the concept of nighttime, which represents the concept of waking up in the middle of the night of Chatzot, therefore, what does it mean? Take a look back at the text here. It means that what? It says, that chesed, that kindness, that loving kindness, that thread of loving kindness, that draws over him, Megan alav min anachash, it protects him from the serpent. So the tree represents the same concept of Abraham planted a tree, aka chesed, and that's that chesed that now is wrapped upon you throughout the day, and it protects you from the serpent, from the nachash. And the story finally finishes off. It says, "Tachazi kama nafish chele dilana." Come see how great the strength of the tree is. Obviously, on a literal level, my God, that is a big tree. To be able to have that raven who has the frog, who was eaten by the serpent, who that frog is the size of 60 houses, the size of the city of Hagrunia, that's a pretty big tree.
is it really that physical, or just they make it the core that is so powerful that they measure that by the size?
You can look at it like that. Yeah.
Because it's not visible when they said a Sfardea that big, or a serpent bigger than that Sfardea.
It's all symbolic.
Okay.
But look how Rabbi Nachman finishes. Hayinu shirabba matmiya et atzmo shekol kach gabar alinu chazdo shafilu azeh yachol lehagen. Rabbah expresses amazement that God's loving kindness on our behalf is so overpowering, so strong, like a tree, that it can even protect us from this. So we see here, right, just to wrap up that story, a pushkansa comes by and he swallows the serpent. The way to safeguard yourself against this kind of study, you're not studying for the right reasons, Lolishma, is by studying the oral Torah, the Gemara, at nighttime. And it goes on top of on top of a tree, because nighttime study protects a person, and it has that element of loving kindness, aka the tree, Abraham Avinu, and it protects him from thoughts that would bring him to studying for the wrong reasons. And then Rabbah, who's a massive tzaddik, right? He's so wow about the power of the loving kindness that is drawn upon that person who studies oral Torah at nighttime. He's like, wow. Guys, we're talking about Rava, like one of the main Tanaim of the Gemara. And he's like, wow. So that's him breaking down a story from Rabbi Bar Chana and how it correlates completely with everything that we've learned so far. So I think here right now, we're about 50 minutes into the class. I could just end it right now. It's 9:45 p.m. You got to go back to Boca. You got to go back to California Club. So far. And you guys got to go back where?
Hollandale.
Hollandale. Oof, very far away. Okay.
Can I just share a real quick thing? So there is a blessing that my mother used to do every morning in front of the mezuzah, praying for her husband, my father. And she used to say, please Hashem, save Eliyahu ben Hana, my father, from the Arabs he does business with, the same way you saved the Sfardeim from the mouth of the serpent. It never made sense to me.
Wow.
Today, last week, it clicked something. And today, like, oh my gee, I got to call my brother to tell him he's in suffering.
Like I said, Hashem sends people what they need to hear. Whoever's on tonight's class, all you guys that are out here, or you'll be listening later on, we just had a story from somebody who was just saying how basically she had heard, was it from who? From?
My mother.
Your mother, her mother.
Every morning.
Would say, Hashem should save us from?
She should save her husband.
Should save her husband, aka her father.
My father, from the Arabs he was doing business
From
with.
the Arabs he was doing business with.
In Morocco.
In Morocco.
The same way you
The same way basically had they say the frogs, he say from the frogs from the serpent. OMG.
I never understood that.
So with Zat Hashem, we will continue next Tuesday night, and we'll continue on this. You're going to see he's going to keep going, and as usual, building and building and building on this Torah. That by the end of it all, you're going to have, like I said to you, and I said, if you look at my description on the actual flyer, it's going to make you think once, twice, 3 times about what you're listening to. And again, we have the time here of the Omer, a time where you're really not supposed to be listening to music, as a time now to reflect as, well, when I am going to be listening to music, what am I going to listen to?